to Beyond the Ring, a podcast that covers all things in the stock show industry from the informative to the insane, starring Ryan Rash
I have come to never underestimate the impossible.
and Dale Hummel.
When all are searching inside the box, history says, look elsewhere.
Now on with the show.
Welcome to Beyond the Ring. This is Dale Hummel, along with co-star Ryan Rash.
Hello, hello, hello.
Ryan, it's been a busy, fun-filled New Year.
Very busy.
I'm
I'm already worn out.
Oklahoma City.
I'm just worn out.
Driving to Arizona, I did fly back, and then to Oklahoma City, and my schedule's been less than yours. But yeah, it's a good start. It's all good.
I mean, it's something. Like
What?
it would be one thing if like I could just get through the Cattlemen's Congress of it all. But no, I don't go home to like January 25th. So
Ryan, clarify that.
well, I leave here and I judge Travis County Pig Show, and then we go to the Fort Worth Open Show, and then I go to some county right on the border of New Mexico and Texas, out there in West Texas. I think it's called Palmer County. I do their whole county fair. Then I fly to Nueces County, and I do their county fair. Then I fly to Fort Worth because I have to be at the BTRJLA all-around trophy and banner presentation for the winner with you. And then we're going to show a couple junior heifers. And then I got to go to Oklahoma and judge a pig show and something else. But yeah.
But then you don't go home.
Yeah, I go.
What I was wanting to clarify is you have no home.
Would you just let it die? I don't have a home.
Homeless. Daddy James and I
think-
discussed this. We decided we should have bulldozed the home and built new.
I
It would have been
agree
easier.
at this point.
Cheaper, easier, everything. Or we should
I
just
agree.
left it the hell alone.
I'm just telling y'all's lovely little conversation y'all had. I'm all for it. Y'all bring that up to Cherie, and both of you will be. I'm not going to tell you what she's going to do to you, but it's going to be very painful.
Well, what is monopolized?
Have you ever seen a bull calf castrated, Dell?
I have. Yep,
Okay,
I have.
I'm just saying.
Let's talk about our speakership.
Okay.
That's all that's been on the news since our last episode.
I hope that I'm wrong. I mean, I genuinely, and y'all never hear me say that because I really love being right. But I hope in this one instance that I am wrong. What I took from the insanity, madness, chaos, disorderly conduct, organization, all of that was on display for the world to see, that was the Republican Party and their electing of Kevin McCarthy. I am convinced that man was emasculated on TV for 5 solid days. He literally will become the most worthless, weak, and ineffective Speaker of the House that has ever been. And I do not personally dislike this man because I've read up on him enough here lately that there's no glaring thing that like makes me think, oh, he's a terrible Republican or anything like that. But this was a disaster. And I'm just telling you right now, the person who has the most stroke and the most power in the Republican Party is Matt Gaetz from Florida.
I can't argue that. I'm taking a different perspective on this. And he, along with a few others, obviously held out and did not want to vote for McCarthy. Some are going to say they want to draw attention to themselves. They're going to come out and talk about independent thinking, and they want to clean the swamp that McCarthy is owned by the special interest. He's just another politician. I don't know what it is, but I have some appreciation. I'm just looking from the outside on the surface, not researching heavily, but I appreciate the fact that there are people within the Republican Party that are willing to stand up and speak for themselves. They may just be grandstanding. I don't know, but I would prefer everybody wasn't like sheep like the Democrats and they all decide here's the woke crazy ass we're going to vote for, and all of them do. I get it. As a party, it's more effective. And you've said this for years, that they all stick together, and the Republicans probably need to play the game. But in the real world,
Well, it is the game. That is the game.
And that's the rules.
I don't. You have to play it.
Yes, I don't like it.
I don't either, but that is the game.
Like it.
And I really appreciate everything that you said. I do. I can go there. I can be with you on all of that. And those 6 people, by God, we're going to do this. And we're not going to elect somebody that's sold his soul for all this other stuff. All that until the point that they did it. If that's what they truly, we should still be taking votes for speaker until McCarty dropped out and they put somebody else in. If that was truly what it was about.
I think it comes to a point, the realization that you can't replace him, you can't get somebody else elected, is when they finally, and they get all the concessions that they want, and it appears though they received a lot. At that point, or, and I heard Gates say this, it was brought up to him on one of the news programs. What happens when the Democrats get together and they want to throw a more moderate one up there to get a more moderate person in the speakership? He basically said if it were getting close to that, to where either the Republicans wouldn't have the speakership or someone even more moderate. No, but
the Democrats and Republicans never got to those talks. And my thing is, I get all that. I was afraid that at one point, like, the Republicans would be like, getting their cocktails refilled or something, and everybody be missing on a vote and whatever, and Hakeem Jeffries would get elected, whatever. But like, I get what you're saying, but in the end, they folded. All of this,
did they get what they? I mean, they got some of what they wanted.
I don't know. Okay, you say that, and they say that. We never saw or heard any of what they wanted.
I did see a list, and I don't remember it. I wish I'd have written it down. One of them was voting on term limits, because that I'm very much in favor of. I remember, but there was a list of like 5 concessions. And again, I don't know if these concessions are written in paper or if McCarthy even has to hold to them after he. I have no idea. And it was some horse trading going on, no question. I think they pretty much could ask for just about whatever they wanted.
Well, and then again, the reason that I say Gates literally has more power than anybody in the Republican Party. When they came out for the 14th vote, Gates went to the reporters, and said, I am literally out of things to ask for. I would like to ask for more. I cannot think of anything else to ask for. And then McCarty comes out a little bit later after him, and they said, do you think, he said, yes, I am going to be elected speaker on this vote. So then they go through the vote. When it's Gates' turn to vote, and Gates did say that he was going to vote yes for McCarty because he was out of things to ask for. Gates abstained from the vote when he was called because I didn't know this until this 14th vote. At the end, they go back and recall everybody that didn't vote by name. And so
in case somebody was out at the bathroom or something like that.
Bathroom break, shot break, whatever. And so anyway, when Gates gets recalled, I mean, he did that on purpose. He was there. Like, there was video of him there. He just didn't speak up. So at the end, he voted present and not for McCarty. And I tried to explain this the last time. When you vote present in this situation, that reduces the number that it takes to be elected speaker. But he had all these numbers, and he knew that McCarty would fail by 1 vote, that they needed his vote to say yes for McCarty. He didn't after he said he would. As soon as that happened, Kevin McCarty got up, walked to the back, had a heated, not real heated, but a very intense conversation, I guess is what I say, with Gates. Then he goes back to the front. Some old man lunges at Gates and tries to sucker punch him, and they literally drag this man by his face down the aisle.
He looked like a swamper to me.
Then
like he's been there for a very long time.
Gates sent his little, I'm assuming it's his chief of staff. I don't know what the little boy is, but anyway, they go back there and whatever, have another convo with Gates. Gates goes up to the front and talks to McCarty, and you couldn't see what they were saying, but then McCarty grabbed him by the shoulder and patted him, and you could see, I will not forget this. And then they shook hands. The next vote, the 15th vote, guess what happens? Gates tells all the people that have been the holdouts to vote present. That reduces the number that it takes to get the majority, so it's no longer 218, and Kevin McCarty is now elected speaker. Thank you for the love of baby Jesus.
And for clarification, voting present's basically like you not even being there.
Right. Yes.
Same thing. You could just not vote or vote present. Same thing. That reduces the number for the majority.
Right. And
that's I was unaware of this whole this happening made me more aware of the process.
Yeah. Well, the whole world's aware, and they all think the Republicans are nuts. But anyway.
Yes,
but that's that. We have a speaker. Yay!
There is still one thing I'm unsure of. During this process, were the ones that were not up for re-election, were they still representatives of Congress during this time, or they all have to be sworn in each year?
It was the new House. The ones that didn't run again, they were gone. But this was all the new ones, and here we are. And so like
the old ones were still congressmen and women during this time.
Yeah, but they didn't get to vote because they weren't.
It doesn't matter because it's not a functional House.
Well, actually, I thought this was interesting too. So the Senate is a continuous body. They never because you're a senator for 6 years. So like when new ones get elected or whatever, they only have to like swear in certain ones because the Senate is a continuous body. When the Congress adjourned before holidays, it's over. And then the new Congress starts. So I didn't know this until this deal, but technically we don't have a Congress for a few days.
And if war were to come up with something, nifty. It would have to be called. They'd have to be called back and re-adjourn. Yeah.
But the Congress is not a continuous body. That is why all of them, every single Congress member, whether they had to get reelected or not, has to be sworn in as a group because it's not a continuous body.
Understand. There's something else I need to bring up. Your president, maybe your little girlfriend's going with him. Mr. Biden is going to make a brief stop in El Paso, I believe today, and today is Sunday. We're recording a little early this week. And from there, he goes to the North American Leaders Summit to meet with Manuel and Trudeau. And I think this was something that was scheduled. So I don't know about this trip to the border if it's not just a stop on the way to the North American Leaders Summit. But there is one thing that this whole talk of the border, and Ryan, you and I have talked about it forever, and I have no idea, and I'm sure every listener pays more or less attention to it individually. But there is something that's been brought to my attention, and I've been curious about this, so I researched it a little. And again, I'm going to say a little, so I'm going to try to simplify as much as I can because that's basically all I know. All of these people coming in as what you or I would call illegals coming across the Rio Grande are coming in and they're basically claiming political asylum. And I think we're all somewhat aware of that. But what we're not aware of is we have laws on the books that defines political asylum seekers when they're leaving their country because of persecution. Whatever country they enter post leaving theirs first, that is where they claim political asylum because they're no longer under the danger of that persecution. So if you're coming from Guatemala, and almost all the Central and South Americans, if they're traveling by land, are going to come through Guatemala to get to Mexico, to get to the U.S. Others are flying in from overseas into Mexico and then coming in. So essentially, Mexico is the country, obviously, that they're choosing to come into. They're not going to Canada and down, at least not in large numbers, before they enter the U.S. So depending on where they're coming from, many may be Mexico, others would be a different country. But the definition of political asylum does not fit any of these that we're allowing into our country under political asylum, turning them loose to be contacted at a later date to come to court, which very few ever do. So if we'd simply enforce that simple rule that no, you cannot claim political asylum, if it's somebody from Mexico and they're truly being persecuted, yep, they get to come in. That's the way the law is written. I'm not saying our laws are written correctly or immigration laws. I'm sure they need revamped. I'm sure there are a lot of things. But what I can't understand is how can we not enforce the laws that are on the books? And that would seem to solve the issue. Maybe I'm oversimplifying, and I'm sure there's a lot of legal jargon that can come into play here. But it is a large percentage. The majority of the people crossing the Rio Grande right now are coming in from countries other than Mexico, claiming political asylum. And to me, that's an automatic. you're not coming in. You go back to Mexico. We're pushing you right back to where you came from or back to your home country. Does this seem logical at all to you, Ryan? Or do you see it that way, or am I incorrect?
Well, I have never understood why all the hoopla over Title 42, because I'm going to say again, I said this on here before, if they would just enforce Title 8, Title 8 is basically Title 42 with a whole lot of other stuff.
Already on the books.
Yeah.
Permanent. I think that's what it comes down to. Enforce the laws we have. Have a border. We just don't really have a border to speak.
They don't want a border.
No.
We've been over this.
But explain to me why.
I do
What is
not.
the reason?
You think that I can explain that goofy old man that's the president and his people that tell him what to do? I cannot.
It can be nothing more than they think they're going to vote for him. And it's such a split 50-50 in our country right now between left and right that if they can sway it a little bit, it works. That
might be it. But here's the whole thing. I mean, I guess that's it. But like, depending on where they land, these people are not going to get driver's license. They're not going to get green card. A green card doesn't give you the right to vote. Like, you have to become a U.S. citizen. And so I know that there are a lot of states that don't enforce the voter laws, and you don't have to have ID and all that. But like, a lot of them do.
So I think it's longer than that, a little longer term. I think at some point, because we have, and I have a situation I want to read here in a second, that a listener sent in to us, and I finally checked our email, and it was interesting. But I think at some point, there are literally millions of people now in the country, I'm going to say undocumented, not citizens, not green cards. They're going to have to be given amnesty and give them a path to citizenship. And once that happens, then they can vote with or without it. It doesn't matter. And again, I don't think this is happening tomorrow, but at some point, amnesty is going to come into play. It just, I don't know how else you solve. Maybe they build the numbers of undocumented immigrants in the U.S. to the point where you have to do something. And I think we're already there. And let me look at I'm going to read this right now. Here's an example. Casey sent this in via email. And again, I don't check email enough. So if you want a question and answer, usually Beyond the Ring Facebook Messenger works. I'm a nurse in the ICU, and I have taken care of illegal immigrants multiple times who are not allowed to go home. And this is a little confusing here. I need to restate that. This is basically an intensive care unit nurse using an example of a patient, I believe. Patients have been placed on a ventilator and cannot be weaned off. They have feeding tubes, etc. There are numerous scenarios, such as having a stroke that's caused a disability where they cannot be discharged home, which I don't know if home is the correct term here because they really don't have one at this point. So what happens? And this is a good question. Basically, the hospital has to take them in and care for them. We all have empathy and can understand that. But at this point, they're not eligible for Medicaid. They cannot go to a nursing home or other facility because they don't have the funds to pay privately. So the hospitals are getting stuck with these patients, and they just eventually they're overloading the system. I'm not saying these patients, and this is Casey again, I'm not saying these patients do not deserve to receive care. However, this is a huge drain on the healthcare system. There was a patient in the ICU I work in for over 60 days. As this border crisis continues, this will become a greater problem. The news media is always saying there are no hospital beds available, and we have people who cannot get an admission to the ICU because of these situations. So basically, Casey is pointing out the fact that they bring them in. They're, I think, legally required to give them care, but there is no system to accommodate. And as this continues and it branches out into our school system, it branches out into every aspect. When we have millions of undocumented immigrants that came across the Rio Grande, I don't know that you can ever integrate them in a legal manner without blanket amnesty. And this is going to be a real issue.
They talk about it, whatever. But like, I'm just telling y'all that everybody can talk about it all they want. And I think it is the greatest crisis that we have in America right now, this border and these immigrants and all this other stuff, because it is the crisis that creates the several other crises that are happening right now. the open border is bringing all the fentanyl in. The open border is allowing sex trafficking to get, even more out of control and despicable and disgusting. And so just several other crises stem from the border crisis.
Yeah, the open border is giving the cartel record profits by charging basically a toll for people to come through their territory to get to the border or help deliver them, increasing their drugs into the country, increasing the gang members, everything. It's going to stem so many directions. I don't think any of us have stopped and just thought about how this is going to impact and touch each of our lives.
And I know we have control of the House, and I do think that the House is going to try to pass a bill that will do something. Will it do enough? No. But then it's got to pass through the Senate. And again, we don't have the majority in the Senate. So, I don't know what happens there. But what I think everyone is missing is the president does not have supreme power, but he does have power to make executive actions. And all of the border policies, pretty much, that Trump put in that got us to the lowest number of illegal immigrants crossing, the most secure, safe border, all this other stuff, that was pretty much all done by executive action. So until we put somebody else in the White House that wants to handle the problem and wants to get control and have a border, I don't think we're going to get anywhere. I'm just being honest.
Agreed. And think about how many millions of dollars we're sending to other countries to secure their border. That is hypocrisy at its highest level. Unbelievable. I'm with you completely.
Yeah. And I mean, every other country has borders and it's fine, but we cannot.
Yep. I think we better go on to talk about the main topic. But before we do that, do you have BTR JLA news?
Yes. Well, today is Sunday. And again, we're recording really early because Dale's got things and Clifton's got, I don't know, he think he's going on like some Hawaiian vacation or something. I don't remember.
But from Hawaii to Fiji to, I'm not sure where. I mean, he's definitely overpaid.
Yeah. And I have to judge like 2 more breeds at Congress and show some breeds and whatever. So it just didn't work out. We had to do it today. But today is Sunday. Tomorrow morning, we have given y'all the last week, and I don't know how many people emailed, but I know at one point it was at the starting point, it was over 200. We've answered all the emails. There have been a few corrections, all this stuff. We actually put up a new points update midweek with the corrections we had, but there's been a few more. I mean, it's not drastic or anything like that. And I'm just going to be honest with you guys. A lot of you emailed or whatever and said, I went to this show and my points aren't counting. Okay, so there's 2 basic problems with the majority of the emails that came in. Number 1 is that show didn't sanction. They never sent in a sanctioning form. They never sent in the results or anything like that. So I think there was, just because you went to a show didn't automatically let it count for points. So I think that was the thing. So this next year, check the calendar, make sure if it's not on the calendar, you can email us, say, hey, is this show that I'm going to sanction? If it's not, reach out to them, explain them the deal. We want every show to be sanctioned, but there has to be a process to it, because if there's not, it's anarchy. So that was the big thing. And then the other thing was there were just some shows that either told people they were going to sanction and send in results, or even some of them that sent in a sanctioning form that they just didn't do it. And that was a very, very, very small number, but that's how it was. And so tomorrow morning, we're putting up points. It's final. It's over. That is the standings. There will be no more corrections, no more whatever. 2022 will be done. And so then we'll start mailing out awards. I know that Dale's coming to Fort Worth, and all-around champion and young man that started in the all-around is going to get banners presented to him there, since we were going to be there anyway. And we'll start mailing this stuff out to you. 2023 is underway. We had a lot of shows this past weekend. And, of course, Congress and Denver, Fort Worth are all coming up. So Congress and Denver are national shows. All the Texas Maker shows want. But so super exciting. If you want to sponsor, please contact me. I do want to bring to light that we had a sponsor for 2022 come in here towards the end, and we are very thankful And I hope that I get this nice man's name right. And y'all know I am terrible with names. But Joshua J. Jamink is how I think you say that. Photographer and portrait artist came and actually he talked to Dale. He didn't talk to me, and he decided that he would do a portrait session for the 4 winners of the species. So the overall cattle, sheep, goat, and pig. He donated this for them. And he grew up in the stock show world, and he loves capturing and supporting the very same programs that helped shape him. He is a fine art portrait photographer and digital artist who values telling your unique story with his authentic and majestic images. If you go to his website, joshuajamink.com, you can see he's got Facebook. We have a post up on the BTRJLA Facebook that can get you all that. The stuff he does is super cool. And so we are very thankful. I know that the young lady that won the cattle deal, her parents contacted me as soon as I put that up. They're like, really? This is really happening? I was like, yes, it's really happening. And so thank you so much for that.
Excellent. No, thank you. That is going to be pretty special, I think. And I went on there and looked at some of the portraits and greatly appreciate it. I think it'll be very special for those that win or are able to get one of those portraits. And we appreciate it. It's going to take a great deal of time on his part and energy to do this. So thank you very much. With that, Showfresh H2O continues to be discovered.
No, stop. We're not talking about them.
Yes,
we are not. Nope,
yes.
We're not. They replaced you as their water boy. Kirk Stillwalt is the face. That is the new one. We're not talking about these people anymore.
And
I am protesting. I am protesting.
In case you didn't see the video, Brandon Callis has a great Showfresh H2O video out as well. But you are correct. I am the most genuinely concerned about water intake on the road, and it shows of anybody.
And yet you were not the water boy.
I don't know. I really don't know where the whole ranking. I think the more people.
And I love Kirk Stillwalt, by the way. I'm just joking about this, but
the more the better.
I think you should have your own ad, a life-size cutout, all the things. I'm just gonna say.
I think it's.
I think Dale's feelings are hurt.
I know.
He's not showing it. He doesn't show his emotions. I think his feelings are hurt.
With that said,
that snap got so much response, by the way. They should be paying me for that snap, by the way.
Correctly. Just cut you at cash would be best, I assume.
Yeah, exactly.
Non-reportable cash.
Perfect.
With Showfresh H2O, again, I do appreciate they continue to sponsor our podcast. I think more people are discovering them in the show industry. If you'd like to increase the chance of success, your stock need to consume water in transit and at the shows. This is simple. We've talked about this in so many episodes. Showfresh H2O is backed by science, made in America. Pick up your Showfresh H2O at your local supply trailer or order online at swampfox.com.
I am also going to have a rally at the next show I go to get Dale to have equal billing as Kirk Stillwalt and Brandon Callis as the water boy. I'm going to set up a GoFundMe. We're going to get a political action committee together. So y'all stay tuned.
I think so. And I'm sure there's others that are representing Showfresh H2O that we're unaware of. So I apologize if we did not include those others. Those are just 2 that I'm aware of. Are you ready for the topic?
Yeah, it's your topic. So if y'all don't like it, sorry.
Facebook, email. I'm wide open. I love it.
You didn't like mine last week, so sorry about like we let Dale try one this week.
I did not dislike yours. That you're not talking.
No, I'm talking about the people. There was the people didn't like it. There was no response.
I'm convinced you base all of this off of social media.
I do. Social media runs the world. It's not official till it's Facebook official.
Okay, I can't. A Pinky in the Brain episode of Chases. That graphic, 3.2 thousand likes with 600 some shares.
Just because it's
all
Chase.
About the graphic. No, it's the graphic, not the episode.
Chase is way more popular than you and I combined. I'm just telling you.
That graphic in that episode post went crazy. Where the one last week did not. I am not going to argue anything about that. It was not, but I think it was good. I think I had a couple texts on it, not many.
Yeah, exactly.
But sometimes those that we think are good, they sometimes don't get.
It's every time.
Okay. Well, this one's going to get downloads. I hope. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. We'll know in a couple weeks. Ryan, let's go ahead and proceed forward. Breeding, purchasing, and feeding to hit a target. And when I say the title, breeding, purchasing, and
It's not the
feeding,
title. The title is target practice because that's just too long.
well, they wouldn't understand what target practice is. But yes, you're right.
know.
I like that. We're basically saying when we and I'm gonna summarize here a little bit, and we won't cover all these in a lot of detail, just not possible. Maybe we'll break it out into other episodes. But when we're making breeding decisions as people in the industry breeding to produce show livestock, we're having to look way into the future and determine what type of animal do we need to produce that the public will want to purchase, that the public is capable of feeding under their management program, that will at some point fit a judge at some show. That sounds like an impossible task to me. It is very, very challenging because of all the variables that come into play. It almost makes you want to stop breeding show livestock, period. So that is difficult. So that's the breeding aspect. The purchasing, we're in a little shorter. Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm going to sum this whole breeding thing up real quick. 95% of successful stock show matings were targeted. They weren't happy accidents. So that's the end of that topic. Moving on.
They were targeted. What do you mean? They were bred for a reason.
Right. It wasn't a happy accident.
I think they're all. I mean, I think all the matings are somewhat targeted or are done for a purpose.
No, I think there's a lot of people that just like throw shit out there and think and see what comes out.
I think
I said successful ones. Successful ones.
I think those that even put a lot of effort into planned matings, the percentage that actually succeed just because they can't all succeed is relatively low.
I think Dale is wrong. I am right. 95% of successful matings in this industry were planned, targeted, whatever. It is not the little painter guy oh, this is a happy accident. No.
Not. I agree. But I think all of them are, I mean, we're always planning what we're going to mate A to B to, just what level. When I talked about those variables that come into play that go through your mind as a breeder, I have issues because there are so many variables that it doesn't matter what you do, you cannot control or predict. No matter what you do, you can do the best job possible and try to breed for what you think it's going to be and what you think is going to feed well, what you think is going to work in the show ring, all of those things. And absolutely, you have to do that or there's no sense in being in this business. And Ryan says 95%. Heck, I think even a higher percent end up winning that came out of a program that was putting thought into it. But it requires so much thought at every level that you cannot predict that it's a challenge. I mean, that whole thing's probably an episode in itself.
I'm also going to give y'all a piece of advice. If you want to stay sane and happy in your life and you're breeding this stuff, you need to adopt the Daddy James and the Shrek theory of how to raise livestock. Would you like to know what that is?
Please, I need that sanity.
When the animal comes out and it's great and it's wonderful and glorious, they raised it. When it's a bad animal, I raised it.
That works. I can just say that was my decision or it was Craig's decision, our manager. So I have a similar outcome.
It works out perfect for them. I mean, literally.
No, that is good. And maybe we're a little bit different in our show goat operation. We still continue, and I'm not going to say 100% because you have injuries, you have different things, but we'll still sell 99% of what is born as show livestock, which I think is a bit unusual. But I am very business oriented, and these things are not a hobby for us. This is our method of deriving income for our family's existence. And when it is, it can't be a hobby. It can't be something to just throw money at, but it needs to function somewhat as a business. And I think your passion, all those things come into play here. But when you sell top to bottom, you're trying to make sure that you've got a group that's not just all over the board. You're not just throwing darts at the target. You better have a pretty good idea and maybe tighten those genetics up via line breeding or proven matings that you're not going to get a lot of those outliers. And that includes both sides, high and low outliers or bad and good outliers. But let's move on just a bit. Purchasing or selecting that show animal, Ryan. And we had an episode all about this a long time ago. But I think you're at least at a shorter window time frame in terms of where type is going to be and so forth. And maybe I should back up here and go a little broader. And I'm going to bring you in here, Ryan. I want you to give me a recent champion of any species that you used that you felt really good about how it fit you. I don't care what species. Think of one.
That like, you mean like just was one of those
champion
very close...
that you named that you felt, wow, I feel really good, but this one just fits me. You've had many, but just one. You're not going to offend anybody about it not being theirs.
Oh yeah, I'll offend the most people, but I mean, like I and again, this is gonna
let's go. I'm gonna help you out.
No, I'm not worried about offending people, but like, so animals stick out like over the years or whatever. Like animals stick out in my mind, and because I've said it on here, I'll tell you. Because I really, really love judging pigs the most because of all the structural differences, there was this gilt, and this was several years. It was during the Rona year, so this isn't a recent one, but I'm telling you, this gilt still sticks in my mind. At a jackpot show, there was nothing. I mean, I loved everything about that belted gilt. I mean, every single thing about her. I was like, if we could draw one up for me, that would be her. And there I can list several, but I mean that's just one that sticks in me.
And there was nothing that you would just say, here's what I want to change.
No, I mean I think I literally said I don't like this one. I love this one, and I'm not going to say anything bad about her because there's nothing to say, and I don't have to because I'm the judge. The end.
And as of say this year even or last year, she would win most of the gilt shows you've judged.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So with that, would you use this exact same? I know it won't be the same animal, but let's say we have a clone, or we just hypothetically say we have a gilt that looks exactly like her 5 years from now. Do you think she'll be your champion?
I mean, I think because we're unless things drastically change, and I don't think they have. I mean,
wait, time out. Things. The history tells us that trends go one way and then they go back.
No, and that's what I'm saying. But because I do believe that, like, I have watched it enough over the years that, like, there's need for change and whatever, but I kind of think in all the species we're kind of at a pretty good spot. Not saying that there won't be little things. I don't know if there will be drastic change. Now, I
love that statement.
But if there is drastic change that we all support, whatever thing happens, maybe not. But I think that we've kind of all got to kind of a happy place. But again, I think one of the things that is, and I'm getting off topic here, which is fine, but like one of the things is I think about judging and sorting is I think it is very important to stay on top. If you're going to do that, do those things, judge, sort, whatever, stay on top of what is current and what is beneficial and what is the trends and all that other stuff. So 5 years, I mean, especially in the hog industry, you can look back in like 5 years, they would have been like racehorse tall, and 5 years later, they bellies would have been on the ground. I mean, lots of stuff can change in 5 years, but
yes,
if it stays kind of where we are, then yeah. I mean,
when you bring that in, that's an easy answer. Let's change it. Let's go 10 years from now.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. I think we would make further progress.
Okay, so and everything you said, I agree with the trends, and here's one thing, and I'm gonna admit guilt as well. If I go back 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it may be, and we don't want to go too far and indicate incredible old age here. But at that time, at that moment in history, I usually felt the exact same as what you're saying, whether I'm showing, breeding, or judging, that if we're at a good show and you've got good stock, that champion, I would always think that, well, we've kind of settled at a base. This is pretty much where we're going to be, that I don't think it's going to change a lot, maybe tweak a little bit here and there. But guess what? It continues to evolve more and more. I'm not saying that your statement is wrong, that it won't go more than a tweak here or there, because I happen to think like you do on that. But I'm afraid maybe we're not looking enough at history and we're blinded by what we believe to be an ideal right now, that same animal just, and again, you will appreciate all those things about her, which in your mind is pretty close to an ideal, correct? At the moment.
Yep.
But because a trend will change, even though she has all those positives, she may not fit that trend. And I think that's the point that both of us are trying to get across. I just don't know. And the pigs move the most. Goats have moved a lot because they're more recent coming into the show ring industry. But that target continues to move because of trends. And if you're breeding for them, you think about cattle, when you make a breeding decision, even if it's a breeding decision that animal will be shown, let alone making a breeding decision to develop a foundational base that eventually will produce show animals, you're predicting 2 to 3 years out when that animal is out there at its height of competition from that day that you make that breeding decision and order semen.
Like every mating in a cattle deal in a show, it's like it's for 3 years basically. I mean, like there you go, and that's where, and again off topic, but that's why pigs can make so much more change than the rest of them, because they can have multiple litters a year and lots of them, and it's not like one calf; they can have 9 in the litter and multiple litters a year.
Yeah, that generational interval and numbers allows us to put so much more selection pressure from the breeder into the pigs compared to sheep, goats, and especially cattle. So yeah, absolutely. Mm. I don't know the answer, and we are a little bit off topic, but not really. It all relates, and I wanted this topic to be wide open, and we can address it a couple different times.
It's the most wide open.
It is wide open. So that target is changing because of trends. It's also changing, Ryan. You just judged Odessa Steer Show, Hereford Steer Show, correct? Yes. And it sounds like you, just in our personal conversation, you really like that calf that won. You thought there's a lot of good in him.
Yep.
Can you, in your mind, he just wins?
I thought he won by a good margin.
Okay. So that is what it is. Can you think of other judges coming into that exact same situation that you were in that may not use that calf?
Yeah, absolutely. Possible? Yeah.
So there's
a lot of people. One of my very good friends and one of your very good friends, I think if Scott Greiner was judging it, he would have used the reserve polled Hereford.
Agreed. From what you've said. No, and there is the other piece of the puzzle. Not only are trends changing, but each judge has an independent opinion, and their ideals are going to be a little bit different. And we love that fact that there's beauty in that. And there's also frustration when you're trying to breed for that target animal or purchase for that target animal, not knowing who the judge may be. Fortunately, in Texas, when you're feeding, you usually know who you're feeding for, have an idea who the major judges are at the top end. So that there is this that comes into play. And I'm going to use an example. And I think, Ryan, I mean, you and I have judged shows back to back, and I think we agree on a lot of them, but there's no question we've used different champions and reserves and top fives, and it happens all the time. So there is another changing target that is hard. And maybe the root of it that I want to discuss briefly, and then I'll give an example. The frustration or the root of it as a breeder, and I'm sure as show families out there selecting and purchasing livestock, Ryan, what determines what the ideal is? What determines what that target is for a given species?
Whoever holds the microphone at the given destination, that's who determines the ideal. But I just want to bring this up, and again, wide open topic, I guess, whatever. But you didn't go right at it, but you went all the way around it, or I took it that way. So you just brought up the fundamental differences in showing market animals and breeding animals to me, because you're talking about different shows and different judges and different opinions and, this target that moves and all this other stuff. So when you have a breeding animal, you can take that animal to Kansas City, Louisville, Denver, 2 years in a row, calf, big heifer, whatever, all this stuff, show to as many judges at very large major type shows multiple times.
Not just jackpots.
Right. I'm talking about the big ones. Okay.
Yes.
But most of them can go twice, and you can go to all the shows and all the big shows and all that stuff. So you're not going to be able to target just a single judge when you have a breeding animal. The reason that I think it is more of an adrenaline rush, more exciting, whatever, to show market animals is because in the end, you got the one shot at the big show.
And when you're talking Texas majors out,
no, I'm talking Denver. What I mean, I know people take. I know people take some pigs and cattle do not normally take them to multiple major shows. Not market animals.
Yes. Occasionally you'll see a steer that bounces from Kansas City to Louisville,
right?
To Denver.
But not often. But I mean, I think that, and maybe it is because in Texas, if most of them die because, but like you got that one shot. There is no second chance. Because people ask me all the time, why did you show? And I don't think I showed more market animals than I did breeding animals, but whatever. But why do you like judging market animals? I said, I love judging everything, but I do think there is a bigger adrenaline rush in the market thing because of that. It is the one shot. So there you go.
No, and I agree with that. And I think you're touching on something. And again, we're straying, and that's fine. We can use this topic for 3 weeks or whatever we need to.
Well, you're talking about a target, the breeding cow or the breeding whatever. There's 900 targets that you got to shoot at.
Yes.
Normally, in most instances, even though you may not know the judge at the beginning, there is one target in the end.
And on the market side,
I'm more on topic than you are, sir.
If you're shooting for the one big show, not a bunch of jackpot shows, but the one big market show, there are fewer judges or targets to hit, and especially at the Texas majors. And I was going to use that as an example on how they are able to adapt better than us Northerners. The Yankees have the national shows to go to. Some are closer together, some are more spread apart. We've got these goats so damn slow growing. We can go from our state fair in the summer to Kansas City, to Louisville, to Arizona, to Denver. If they're not a champion and not terminal, we have a much larger show window than, say, pigs and steers for the most part because of the growth, and a little bit on the lamb side as well in some situations. And we've talked about this, Ryan, when you're going out, if you're just showing at the Texas majors and you want to be competitive and you have not Gay Hill type money, but decent funds to go out and buy animals, we're not necessarily, and on the steer side, those judges aren't released. Let's use cattle as an example, because sometimes on the goats, in the lambs, you know who the judges are at the majors before you even have to buy them. I don't believe that's the case in the steers. You're buying the steers before you know who's judging the majors, correct?
Normally they announce late spring, so like late April, May, or whatever. So most people have already put steers on feed. Now, the super serious whatever ones, when they announce those, I'm going to tell you that a lot of the families that I helped and myself showing, when they announced those, if we could go find one that we thought fit Judge XYZ at the San Antonio Stock Show more, we went and found it.
Yeah, because you still don't have.
We at least hunted for it if we didn't think we had it. You know what I'm saying?
Normal steer season the bulk of it might be over, but you're still able to legally go out and buy because of nominations.
Yeah, because we don't validate till June.
Nope,
that
makes perfect sense. So I guess the big picture, what I'm getting to is, if you're going to 5+ majors or major shows, you can buy a group of animals, and then as they mature, as you put them under different management programs, you can kind of decide you have more than one target to hit. You can start shifting that really big top, big ended one to Scott Greiner, that great looking one to somebody like a Brad Angus, or you have choices. And usually that's how it plays out there. We don't have as much of that. Once we purchase, we're pretty well locked. And unfortunately, the national shows, I'm gonna talk I think we can go the pig, the lamb, and the goat side of it. A lot of times we're purchasing, or families are purchasing those before they know who the judge is. And they're not purchasing as many as the Texas families because they may only be going to that one national show because they're spread out. They're not as tightly close. I mean, you can buy an animal for a Texas major and you've got a 2-month window where all the majors are, for the most part, are pretty close to it.
Our state fair is in October, but like I said, I just got done judging Odessa, and it has goats, finals, and Herefords and poles, but it's the first major show. Next one's Fort Worth, San Angelo, San Antonio, Houston, and Austin. So from literally the 1st of January till basically the very end of March, that's where they are.
So, I mean,
other than our state fair.
Yeah, and the state fair, people, at least in the small animals, and I think in the steers, they're going to buy for state fair and buy for major. Those are two different buying groups.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the state fair ones, then when they're buying up here, they're competing against most of the northern state fairs, and that market gets pretty darn competitive because of such. So with that, I want to use an example on that moving target. We talked about the trends, how that's going to continue to move, and we can't necessarily predict that. We hope we can as breeders, but even as families going out and buying livestock and how you're going to feed those animals, we can't always predict where that trend's going to be. But that's more of a long-term situation that breeders are more concerned about probably than feeders, because they continue to buy each show season or for each targeted shows. With that said, I'm going to use an example that I was in, and Ryan, you've been in this exact same situation and discussed it with me. The Arizona National Open Cattle Show. I spent a couple afternoons sorting through the different breeds, and then we eventually get to the Supreme Champion. And at that point, although I sorted all the breeds individually and brought the breed champions and reserves are allowed to come back in for Supreme, at that point, they bring in 2 other judges that traditionally are ranchers or more ranch based. And I am sure they change each year. I don't know if that once in a while the same one will come back. But this year specifically, I can address 2 ranchers came in. One was actually a former superintendent of the show. And I can appreciate bringing in that perspective. As we've talked about, our environment that we were raised in will somewhat dictate what type of animals we like, irregardless of the species. And there's no question that each of the 3 of us were brought up in different environments. And guess what? When it comes time to writing down the champion or ranking the top 3, and we're not discussing them, it's independent, that you just rank those animals, and then a point system will essentially determine who's champion and reserve. Ryan, do you think any of our 3 were exactly the same?
Probably not.
No, they weren't. And I don't know if it's supposed to be disclosed or not, but I think I pretty much talked about it on the microphone. They weren't the same. And this is just normal when we have committees, and sometimes they'll even post what those 3 judges, we talked about it at 1 judge, 2 judge, 3. We kind of talked about it then. And just recapping right now that this is just evidence again that the individual judges are going to have different opinions. So on that exact same day, in that exact same show ring, 3 of us all came up with different rankings, and a point system determined who wins. And maybe the environment that I had to sort through the classes and the breed champions biased me one way, versus maybe they didn't watch that whole procedure and they're just coming in and looking at the there's so many variables that come into play. I think it's just another example of how that target becomes difficult to it's not an absolute. Maybe it's the best way to look at it.
Well, there's 900 different ways to do this. And like I said, same system happened when I did the open show in Arizona and all this other stuff. But so you're talking about influences or whatever. So I don't care what you want to do, but you cannot tell me that when those breed champions came back in and you're watching them come around and whatever, eventually I think you wrote down the animal that you thought was absolutely the very best one. But also, I know when I am a judge, at least I would say, just like Odessa yesterday when I judged, the horn steer lineup comes in. And class 4 was the deepest class. And I was like, that was really a deep class, whatever. So that weighs on my mind, but I thought class 3 was the best steer. So when you were watching those come in, you probably said to yourself or thought, oh, Lord, I remember that one beat a really, really good one in breed or division, or that was a tough breed. Maybe this wasn't one. All of those things come into your mind. And the other 2 guys, there's none of that.
No. And we've talked about all these things subconsciously, whether you're conscious of it. All of those things are playing a role.
That is an impossible target to hit right there. I mean, like in that situation. I mean, it's just because you can do so much. Like, they knew you were the judge. Several people took stock out there they thought you would like or whatever. Some people left some at home that they didn't think you would like as much, all this other stuff. You win your breed, you get out there, and then bam. I mean, those other 2 people aren't announced till right then. And there's nothing you can do or change at that point anyway. The animal's dressed and whatever been targeted in one guy for that show. And so that's kind of an impossible target to hit.
No, and I think that reinforces something that you and I have preached so many times, that when we're breeding, purchasing, and or feeding to hit a target or a judge or your target practice title, for the love of God, county fairs, jackpot shows, national shows, Texas majors, I don't care who you are. Once you have a confirmation that that judge is going to be sorting those animals, tell people, release the name. It's going to make for happier customers. If they show up not knowing that judge, or it's their state fair and they're going irregardless of who the judge is, they're going to be a whole lot happier if you give them the tools available to best hit the target.
Yeah, because even after, like, and we've talked about this several times or whatever, but it's okay because it's an important thing. Like, even people that may only buy a limited number of animals, not the me's that had, 4,000 of them on feed or whatever, but like, if you announce that judge early enough, you can't change your animal completely, but you can, between exercise programs and, other things, the way that you manage them, all this other stuff, you can make adjustments in that animal to better fit the target judge at the end.
Absolutely.
But you got to know who that person is.
If I know who's judging Louisville, we use goats as an example. If I know who's going to sort Louisville next fall, and those animals were born here this fall and being born now, that will be going to Louisville in the goat arena. And that's a whole other thing. We can dive in, and this will be for another episode. And I thought we'd get to it on this one, but we have to decide if we're showing ABGA full blood goats, if we're showing commercial does / weather dams, if we're showing market goats or wethers. Let's just say we're showing wethers at Louisville, and here is the judge. Once I know the name of that judge, I'm going to gather as much information as I can. Hopefully I've already witnessed that person judge a show and have somewhat of a feeling on where they're going to be, provided they haven't changed a whole lot. And I'm going to use that information. Everything that I know about that judge will come into play when I'm helping families select that animal for that show, when I give guidance on how to feed and manage for that show, and even a little bit, depending on the judge, how that last week goes and how that individual presents that animal in the show ring. That judge's name is going to impact every single decision that I make for my children or the advice I give to other families for their kids going into Louisville. And I think if show management could simply understand that concept, that it has that large of an impact on the top end. I'm not saying somebody that just buys an animal, go to their county fair and kind of enjoys the experience, but on the top end, and that's what we're talking about at a national show like Louisville, that impacts things, every single decision. If they can comprehend that, I cannot imagine they could sleep well at night holding back that judge's name. And if they think that they're avoiding it being political by not letting that name out, they're wrong, because we've stated it before, Ryan. Those that judge is going to be political with, when they get that contract, guess who's going to find out?
The people that they're political with.
Yeah, and guess who's not going to find it? It widens the gap, doesn't it? It makes it worse.
Yeah. I mean, that is, and again, that is the stupidest argument I've ever heard in my life. Oh, we're not going to let anybody because we don't want it to be political.
We don't want them to get to the judge or this or that. That is.
We don't want them talking to the judge. Okay, if you are on a level with a judge that you can do that kind of bullshit, they're going to know, because obviously you're very tight and talk to each other more than about the show.
So FYI,
dumbest argument I've ever heard.
Show manager.
The dumbest argument I've ever heard is we want to hire somebody that nobody ever knows or heard from, so it won't be political. That's the dumbest argument, because you hire somebody nobody know or heard of, then there's probably a reason for that. Like they ain't never judged before or don't need to.
There's
Second
a lot
dumbest
to that.
argument.
I think on the surface it's a great plan. It just doesn't work.
No, it's dumb. And the second dumbest argument is we don't want to announce the judge because we don't want anybody to get to him or her. Yeah,
no,
bullshit.
that happens. I don't know about down there, Ryan, but our county fair system in the north, and even state fair, Illinois State Fair, I have had this discussion with the superintendents in several of the species, and some will let the name out and some will not. And I today cannot understand, and I assume some of them listen to this podcast. Please rethink and reconsider, because what you're doing makes no sense. It just doesn't. There's no logic. I can't wrap my head around it. at all.
I'm with you.
Not whatsoever. So we've kind of hit on several different things and how that more about, and I knew it would evolve to that moving that target and everything we do from that breeding decision, if you're a breeder, from the selection of that animal we're going to purchase to how we're going to feed and manage that animal going to all of it comes into play. And that is our target. And Ryan, you define the target as that person in that ring at that day. And sometimes we're going to have situations, and Ryan, you've preached this so many times, those judges at larger shows for the most part, but everybody has a different goal. The goal of one family may be to win the county fair. And if they announce who's going to judge the following year, maybe it's a 2-year contract, so you know who's going to judge. Those decisions went, or that name or that person being the target has gone into those decisions. And all of a sudden you show up show day at your county fair and Mrs. What's her name or Mr. What's his name decided that they couldn't make it for whatever reason. You have somebody else. If we as judges would think a little more about that, we would maybe not accept as many shows if there's a chance we can't judge that show. And I think we would, I don't know if we put the effort into what you did. I remember last year you drove to somewhere in Montana from Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
You take it to an extreme, which is better than not. But I think let's reel it back. I'm not saying go that far, but within reason, if you take it, let's try to fulfill that commitment, because it's not just that you can't make it and somebody else will do a fine job. It's the people that have been gearing up for you. And maybe the world doesn't do that, Ryan. Maybe I overthink everything and put too much emphasis into trying to best fit and give the best chance.
I think there's some people that probably don't. They just do what they do and try to get their animal looking the best for the show regardless. But I think there's just as many or more that do try to, specifically tune and on an animal for that specific judge. And I'm very offended that you think that I am extreme, by the way.
You are.
I drove 12 hours to get to a show. Yes. I am not extreme. I'm very normal, rational. You are low key, laid back type of person.
When people ask me and I get this, tell me about Ryan Rash. Do you want me to know what I tell them?
Crazy.
That's all I say. And I'm not, and I'm not saying it behind your back. I tell you about it and I just leave it
daily.
There's no better way to describe. And not as much as you put the 12 hours driving there. What was your rental car bill on that situation? Tell me.
Let's not.
No, I want to know. I'm going to remind Shrek what it was.
Well, the drop-off fee alone was $1,500.
That part is hard to justify. You did not get paid probably $1,500 total to judge the show, is my guess. Maybe you did. I doubt it.
Okay, move on. Next.
We got to get you enrolled in Business 101 someday. We just have to do that. Okay, so I didn't even get into. I was going to talk about each species and how we're and there's one, and we've talked about hair or no hair. When we're buying here, let's conclude on this. I'm just going to pull one example out, but I was going to talk about the full bloods versus market animals and the goats, the frame sheep, in wool, slick shorn breeding sheep, commercial ewes or weather dams versus market ewes and wethers. The same thing in the goats, the pigs. There's so many. We have to narrow. Here's the exact division within species that we're targeting, and here's the rules that apply to the shows that we're targeting. So Ryan, tell me this, and this would be a good way to end and maybe lead on to other episodes. And we have like 3 or 4 episodes on the books now that I'm so excited about. Okay. When you're going out to, let's say for a client that you're back into brokering steers and somebody comes to you and they say they want to steer for Fort Worth and they want to steer for San Antonio.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are you going to go out and buy the same steer for that?
Absolutely not.
Why?
Because and there will be some people in Texas that disagree with this, whatever, but I am a firm believer you will never change my mind, and I've had a lot of success Texas major shows that there is maybe 5% of the steers put on feed that can be very, very successful at a haired show and then very, very successful at a slick shirt show.
And
it's just not
5% might be generous.
I was trying to be generous, but I mean, and again, I'm not saying that you can't go to Fort Worth and maybe not make the sale and then slick him off and maybe make the sale at San Antonio. I'm talking about I had a very targeted audience. We were not there to make sales. We wanted to win something. You understand what I'm saying?
Every time you purchased a steer for a family, you knew whether it was going to show as a hair calf. The targeted show is either haired or not haired, and there's no.
And they would, and if they would say, "Well, we just want one steer," okay, you want a slick one or you want a haired one, because it ain't the same.
And you have to answer that question before you. So why are we not selecting? Why can't the same calf do both?
Because the slick versus hair just changes everything. I mean, it changes almost.
I hear people every day whether they're looking at buying baby goats or looking at cattle and judging shit that we can see. I hear people tell me all the time they can see through the hair.
I think that there are some that can, and I have talked on this, and I think that the fact that I have had to buy so many slick ones and know whatever, I think I can look through it some, but even more than that, everything changes, because there can be a great, just the very easiest example to show this, to talk about this and prove this to. There can be a great steer that has terrible hair, whether it is kinky or curly or whatever, all these things. That calf's not gonna sniff at Fort Worth with terrible hair, whether it's wavy or whatever, all this other stuff. You share that stuff.
Should it not be appreciated for what it is?
No, it shouldn't. Not in the herd show. No,
you're right. It won't. It won't. But people.
But you share that thing off, and I'm telling you, I've had them win the whole thing that never went to a jackpot show because we would have got laughed at. You slicked that puppy off, and we won the big banner. I'm just saying, these are facts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's. I cannot explain enough, and this is another episode, another topic. And
I can sit there and give you 900 more, but just that one, and then one other one, just for in terms of a confirmation, not just hair. The whole muscle shape that you have to be successful in a slick sheared deal is not the same in a haired deal.
If people can see through the hair, how do you explain that?
I'm just telling you, it's not.
That's because we can't. And I'm
just telling you, it's not.
When the hair is really good and they're well managed and well presented, yeah, we can all see through the hair to a certain degree, but not to the reality, to the absolute. That if you slick one off,
I think there are more. I think that to some degree people can. I think there are some that are better at it than others, but no, I agree with you. Say you can't 100% see through it, but. So yeah,
and I'm not saying that I like slick shows versus hair. I think the hair is a great thing. I think it builds all the things that we talk about in our industry.
It's a lot harder to win a slick show. It's a lot harder.
I mean, there's just, and I'm not opposed to either one of them, and so I don't want you to think I'm promoting.
No, I'm not either. I mean, there was one point where I thought I might end my life when they did this to slick shear wise, but now I'm fine with it. But
and I get it. So to simplify it, the fact that if we were to take that we're using Fort Worth kind of as an example, that champion steer, slick that sucker off and re-show him slicked. If we could truly see through the hair 100%, he still wins slick, but we can't. That's that simple. We can't to that level. Can we see through hair to a certain degree? Absolutely. But when you talk about that muscle shape, I mean, I look at it at Oklahoma City, Ryan, watching the Red Angus and the Black Angus show, the little bit that I was there this year. When we get those animals a little fat and we get those animals haired up and presented, you look at them, you say, okay, they're acceptable on muscle. You take them back to that wash rack and you look at them then, do you think you're still going to say the same thing on a lot of them?
No. And, I mean, you just talked about fat. That brings up another thing there. So animals with hair, they can be fatter and the hair covers up that they're fatter.
And they can be leaner and it covers up they're too lean. Both ways.
When you take the hair off of them things, they've got to have an athletic shape and build. If you've got a really fat steer out in a slick sheared show that maybe with hair, you can contour him and carve him up, whatever else.
Give him some shape.
It's not going to work.
No, on the slick, you have
it's
to
just
get
not going to work.
The fat level has to be perfect. Has to be right where it needs to. Can't be too much. Can't be too little. Right. On the hair thing, we can go wild, and more times than not in the breeding animals, we go wild to which direction? We get them extremely fat, to make them look thick enough. And then we carve some shape into them. And with all of that, we still say, well, they're just acceptable. Take that away, they're dairy cattle narrow.
Oh, dear God. Here we go again with the dairy cattle of it all.
Yeah, the dairy. We don't. I'm not a fan.
I hope we don't have any dairy listeners here because they're going to be pissed.
Dairy cattle shape in the beef industry. The dairy cattle just need to make milk. I don't care if they have any milk.
You already have the frame sheep hating us. Now we're going to have the dairy
I like
cattle
the
people
frame
hating
sheep
us.
people. I appreciate that way they can carve. Okay. You know what it's time for?
I don't know.
It is. So this topic, you're going to call it target practice. I'm going to say the breeding, feeding, or breeding, purchasing, and feeding of livestock.
I want
continue.
a graphic of Elmer Fudd shooting a musket at a target. By God, cartoons work.
We'll try to find that one. They do. They
Get on it.
absolutely do.
Right now.
Okay, and I did talk to Chase. He's got another episode as soon as he can get his new guest. We're not a guest this time. His guest,
I'm
and
heartbroken.
Clifton coordinated. They're going to drop
That is just rude.
Episode of
I
Beyond.
used to like Chase. We're done.
I kind of encouraged it. I thought maybe it'd be good, and we can come back in on
Done.
some others. Okay,
Rude.
thank you for
Heartbroken.
discussing this. This
The
is gonna
emotional
spin up-
scars will never heal.
Oh my! So for the listeners, we will take this topic and break it down further as we move on, and we continue to come up with topics and re-energized. But we are going to go to question and answer, and this time, now don't expect this very often, Ryan. That I did dive into the email to see if there were some questions we may have missed. And there's piles of them. So I continue to remind you, if you really want your question answered, Facebook Messenger via Beyond the Ring Facebook page is the best plan. Okay. I don't know I didn't get the name of where this first question came from. And I think we've talked about this, but this person would like clarification just to make sure. First of all, we would like to say we absolutely love your podcast. Our family learns and laughs so much. One question we have is on the butt or rear view lineup. I just want to clarify that even breeding heifers stand square on the rear. We are a family that is always being told to stand scissored. Just wanted to check on this before the 2023 show season. Thank you for the clarification.
And again, I'm not saying that these people are wrong, but they're wrong. And there are people that because since we had that little topic or whatever we did, I've had more than several come up and say, well, we went to such and they said that we're always supposed to stand staggered with the heifer. Wrong.
It's so simple for me. Do what's going to make them look best from that view. Do it it goes back to do things with a purpose, not just because
this is just stupid simple. The judge is looking at the width, thickness, and dimension of your animal from behind. If you have the feet square and wide, they're going to look like they have more width to base. The muscle's going to pop more, all these things. When you stagger it, whatever, it's not. That's just dumb. Now,
does that staggered look work on the profile? Sure.
Yes, because then the tail head lays in better. The top of all those things. Yes, there are reasons for that.
But that's what we get back to. Do it for a purpose, not because somebody at a show camp said such
Lord,
and such.
this gets my blood pressure worked up.
I wish those at the show camps, and I'm not trying to pick on them, but I just wish every family would think for themselves and say, okay, why am I doing this? Not just because I was told to, but question why. And there's no.
I think everybody should do just that. Like literally take all the advice that you can get from people that are successful. Wait, let me rephrase that. Take all the advice you can get from people that are successful or knowledgeable, but then gather all that up, and then just like you say, ask yourself, well, why or whatever. Yeah, you just can't do something because somebody told you that's what to do. No. And even what we say on this podcast, just don't go out there and do it just because Dale and Ryan said to. I mean, yes, we are knowledgeable, we are successful, whatever, all that other stuff. You still got to think for your own at some point.
Huge. That should be another one of those Christmas wishes. Think for yourself, please. Okay. Question 2. This one, I missed the name. I apologize. Leased animals. And we've talked about leased animals. Leased animals in the cattle show circuit and their impact on the bred and owned divisions for the heifer shows. This likely is an age-old issue for the junior shows, but has become more prevalent now encroaching on the bred and owned heifer shows, with kids seeing for the first time at a show or the heifer leaving the show on a separate trailer than that exhibitor's, though was shown in the bred and owned division while at the show. Seems like this defeats the whole purpose of bred and owned, and we're seeing this more and more with multiple weekend show events. Personally, feel this will have a long-term negative or hurt the show industry, but would like to hear your insights on this. So I think to summarize, Ryan, they're talking about people showing the bred and owned division, and I don't I mean, we have Kentucky bred, Illinois bred. We have we don't see bred and owned as much in the other species as we do cattle. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, it's definitely a cow thing.
And definitely more popular in there. So they're asking about, should it be allowed to lease an animal? I mean, I think the answer is it's
okay. Here's the thing. I don't know if it's lady or man or whatever. Like I get what you're saying. I understand. And while I'm not saying that what they're doing is right or wrong, because I don't know this particular situation, and this kind of goes back to every story's got one person's side and the other person's side, and then whatever in the middle may be true. But like, I understand what you're saying. They leased an animal. The animal had a calf. Therefore, since the papers of the leased heifer, that calf is technically bred and owned by said exhibitor. I get it. You're saying they don't own any of it anyway, so that animal should not be bred and owned. Not saying you're wrong. I'm saying that's how the game is, and that's how it's going to be played. Because on the paperwork that you have to submit, it is what it is. I know this person is going to be angry saying that, well, whatever, but like, that's the game.
So doesn't it fall under one of those rules? If you can't enforce it, you can't do anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, you can't. There's no way to enforce this rule, because no one is ever going to say, "Oh no, that one doesn't own that one, and that one didn't breed." No, they're not. So it's an unenforceable. Is it a situation? Is it a thing? Yes, I agree. Do I think it's probably
not right? If you're in the bred,
I'll say it's not right. I will say that. But I'm also going to tell you that there is no way to prevent that from happening.
Agreed. 100%.
So I would just save you some anxiety and some blood pressure medicine and just let it go, Elsa.
Have you noticed I've been better about letting things go, by the way?
I don't know. You didn't talk to me at OA's. Cattlemen's Congress. You shunned me.
I spoke to you.
You shunned me.
I can tell you what you're wearing. Bright green coat with St. Patrick's Day tennis shoes on.
Shunned me.
With some sparkles.
It's fine. Chase has shunned me. You have shunned me.
Question 3 comes
I have to get a therapist.
Sherry, I have a question regarding cattle supplements. Do you recommend anything specific for joints or stiffness? There are so many different choices. I wanted to see if you had a suggestion.
She said stiffness?
Yep. Joints, basically just to loosen, make them more flexible, I assume.
I'm going to say that no. We have used selenium boluses before. We've gone through every supplement there is. I'm not saying that there wasn't minor improvement or, whatever. But no, if you just want my honest opinion, I have not found any supplement that I saw very different results in one that was too tight moving or the joints weren't great, swelling, all this stuff. And we used this supplement and there was a significant change. No, there was not for me.
No, and I think if we're going to be honest with ourselves, that's probably the answer. There may be some minor changes.
And every animal's different. Something may work different on yours, but you're asking my opinion, whatever. I have not found that product.
And if there's a nutritional deficiency and you give, say, some selenium, and yeah, absolutely. But if everything's in balance in their diet and they're being managed well, there's probably going to be very minimal difference putting them on various joints. Maybe some, and it may be worth it. Maybe there's probably not going to hurt anything as long as you're not giving too much of it to affect the balance of the nutritional side of things. So I like that answer, Ryan. I think that you also need to realize, Sherry, that there are pain relief that we can give that will usually make animals move better if
She
it's
said
a
supplements.
soreness.
She didn't say drugs.
No, exactly. So drugs is a different story.
There's a difference.
Yes. So
There's a big difference there.
Just to clarify that. And again, good question. I think if there was, Ryan, that.
There's a large difference between drugs and supplements, people. I'm just letting y'all put that out there.
If there was that supplement, I've had enough injuries, we're going to say, that I have knees that creak and crack. They're painful at times in other parts of my body, that if there was a supplement that really helped those joints, don't you think that, and there are some that are being sold, obviously, you see it all the time on advertisements. I don't know that there's a human supplement, and there's way larger market on the human side to do the research and to get it right. That is like a magic wand.
Another podcast topic.
Yeah, take you from painful to minimal pain. I'm not saying they don't move a little bit, and some supplements don't help lubricate, maybe hold more water in the system or lubricate the joints, or I think there's some value in a small move one way or the other. And if that's what you're shooting for, yeah, it probably works. But if you're looking for that magic wand, it does not exist, or it would be in the human side and somebody be making a lot of money on it. With that, Ryan, I think it concludes a little longer episode.
That was only 2.
Oh.
Was that 3?
Yeah, that was 3. We did the scissors, we did the bread and owned, and we did the supplements.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, so
yay!
You're starting to like. Did we ever mention?
No, I'm not. I was just trying not to. We didn't do any of them last week,
and any listeners catch on to that?
People got angry.
I did.
That's the only things I got from my wonderful topic about words matter. Is people are like, why wasn't there question and answer?
I thought we did last. We didn't do it on the New Year's. I don't know,
or whatever the New Year's one, whatever it was. Yeah, I was like, sorry. They're like, we like that because you hate it so much. Thanks. Pleasure from my pain. I appreciate you people so much.
I love it. Well, Ryan, good luck sorting the Scimitals tomorrow. I was going to try to get to Denver. I don't know that I'm going to make it, but you weren't heading that direction. You're going many other directions anyway. But I will for sure see you for the overall presentation at Fort Worth. I don't know about before then, but until next week, be safe.
Y'all come back now, you hear?